Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of SmugMug Live. This is episode 12. It's been quite a few weeks now since we started doing these. So, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. And as always, I'll start with a couple of housekeeping things. Please let us know where you're joining us from in the world. Post where you're joining us from in the comments. It's always exciting to see where people are joining us from, and we'll give you a little shout out. And also, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release a new episode of SmugMug Live. We've had a wonderful few weeks already. We've had some amazing guests, and we're going to continue that today with another guest. Today's guest is someone who comes from our Flickr community. She's a Flickr pro. It's the wonderful Brooke Shaden. I have known Brooke for a number of years now and had the pleasure of meeting her around the world at various events, but obviously at the moment we can't do that. So I'm delighted that she's agreed to join us today. A few years ago when we first acquired Flickr, we were very fortunate that Brooke was also celebrating her 10th anniversary of being on Flickr, and we made this cool little film celebrating that anniversary over on the Flickr YouTube channel. You can see that. And the concept we did was to recreate the very first picture Brooke had posted 10 years earlier on Flickr. So if you want to go watch that film, you can find out how it all turned out and how she reimagined and rethought that first image. But I guess that's probably about 12 years ago now. But let's see if Brooke is with us today. Brooke, are you there?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm awesome. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I can't wait to do this.
Yeah, well, it's typically we're somewhere cool hanging out in some part of the world, but like most of our guests, we can't be together. So
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you've agreed to come and be on the show today. Are you keeping well? Is everything okay at home?
Yeah, things are great here, actually. I live my whole entire life in quarantine every day for the past 33 years that I've been alive. So it's pretty much business as usual here.
Business as usual, but
Yeah.
yeah, with a slight different twist probably. But
Yes.
and I'll say this, obviously we are all at home, so we all have families going on behind us and that type of stuff. So if you hear normal life going on, it's either my kids or Brooke's household. So really not an issue. It's the new norm to have family running about while you're doing these things. So we're starting to get some comments coming in, which is great. Keep those coming, and I'll let Brooke know about some of the comments that come in. So while you're saying it's kind of you're always in quarantine, but what have you been up to for the last few weeks or the last couple of months, really, since we last saw each other?
Gosh, I have been sort of, I think many of us have pivoted lately and tried to figure out what is going to sustain us when we have to quit a lot of the things that we do usually. So I've been doing a few things. One is working on a new photo series that I've been working on for 2 years, but I was supposed to have that show debut today actually, and it's not because obviously we're not doing stuff like that. So I've taken the time to create a few extra images. I'm learning how to paint on top of my prints and create original mixed media art and stuff like that. So it's been a good period of learning and growth, but also just like wildly busy because it's really hard having a 2-year-old running around your house with no childcare. So it's been an interesting balance. And like, I wish that I could say I've spent all my time in quarantine, just like with so much time to do all these creative things, but that is not the case. So I've been working on my series. I started a mentoring program that I just opened up. We had our first meeting on Saturday. That's been awesome. Yeah, just lots of pivoting and expanding on things that I love to do and refocusing.
Yeah, a lot of us find us very busy at the moment, maybe even busier than we would normally be with our schedules,
Yes.
kind of pivoting to other things. But life has changed for you. You've been quite public about the fact you're a new foster mum. So how
Yes.
are you finding the kind of work life balance? Even though it's unusual times for everyone, this is particularly unusual for yourself.
Yeah, it is really unusual. And I feel like I haven't caught a break yet because I became a mother in December and we didn't have any childcare from that point on and then never really got it because of the lockdown. So it's been like basically it's been 5 full months of just a big adjustment, no childcare, trying to figure out how to parent while working. And so basically I've gone back to like a beginner's mindset of when I first started my business. I had a full-time job and I wasn't doing this for a living. And so I've been getting up extra early. I start my work days at 5 a.m. now and I work until 6:30 or 7 whenever he lets me. And I've been amazed at how much I can get done in that time, just like I did when I first started my business and I had another job to go to. So that's been nice. So I don't know if that's exactly balance because it's just like working extra hard a lot, and then working into the night as well. But it's been really oddly fulfilling, like that feeling like I'm a beginner again and I have to figure this out and I have to do whatever it takes to make it work. And it's kind of fun and exhausting, but fun.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. So that's great. I noticed you posted on, I think it was an Instagram story where you've got the new family involved and taking some pictures already as well. So that's kind of fun.
Yes, he loves it. Oh my gosh. He sees my camera and all he says is picture, picture, picture. And he loves to pretend. And oh yeah, I was doing a self-portrait the other day where I was running in front of my camera and jumping and using my remote and then I looked away for a second. When I turned back, he was pushing my camera buttons and then running in front and jumping and going to look at the picture that he took, and it was just so cute. He was just copying everything I did.
So he's a self-portrait artist already. That's awesome.
Totally. He knows which button to push on the remote. He's got it. He's only 2. He just turned 2.
That's cool. We'll need to get him a Flickr account and get him started on posting his images. That'll be fun.
Yes.
He might be our youngest account. Who knows? I need to look into that. But you mentioned mixed media stuff. I know you got a bunch of images delivered. I think maybe just yesterday that you're going to draw. And tell us a little bit more about why and how. That was quite exciting to see that post that you've got some new ideas coming.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So I started this new series called Samsara. I started it a couple years ago, but it's taken a while for it to really get fleshed out and work for what I need it to do. And so basically I started creating these super dark images with like really dark backgrounds, heavy texture, a lot of like kind of nude figures that are covered in texture and different things. And I was creating it and I was like, I love this new work, but it just feels like it's missing something interactive or like physical and tangible about it. And so I started thinking, well, what if I painted on top of them or tried encaustic, which is putting wax on top of your prints and making them look like you can really reach out and touch them rather than it just being a photograph. So I'm working on that. I don't know what I'm doing at all. So I'm working on figuring out how to apply the paint and the wax and stuff like that. But more so, my big, big, big goal, I wrote down last year what my goal for 2020 and onward is, and that is to create connected and interactive art. And what I really want is to create work that people feel like they can interact with in more ways than one. So not just like thinking about the art, but also like they can touch it if they want to, they can destroy it if they want to, they can add to it if they want to. So I'm working on new interactive exhibits where people can create their own art or destroy my art in the process of the exhibition.
Wow, that destroy it. That's proper interactive. I like the idea of that.
It's like, I'm sorry, I know I'm like going on a tangent, but I'm so passionate about this because art, like as artists, it's so easy to be like, okay, I'm going to share my art. And what I want is a good reaction and I want people to like it. But I think it's equally interesting and important when people hate it. And so like to be able to express that and do something about it and to express their anger or their love for something, I think that's really cool.
Cool. And I'm assuming you're not just practicing straight on these new pictures. Have you got some test medium or are you just going to go for it?
I forgot to print test. So I'm going to use like, there's one print that didn't quite print right in the batch. So I'm going to use that as my test and then maybe print, do a few more as tests and go for like try on the smaller ones before I go for the big 30-inch prints. But yeah, we'll see.
These are proper artist originals, not even test prints, straight into the actual piece.
I don't know what I was thinking.
It's funny. I get into these conversations, and obviously I'm very fortunate to know you and just start talking as typically I do, and I forget that maybe some of the people tuning in don't know who Brooke Shaden is, and maybe we should give them a little bit of an insight into who you are. So how would you describe yourself and the work that you do?
So I'm a self-portrait artist primarily, very much by choice. I don't really like to talk to people very much or interact with people. Like I said, like I've always kind of lived in quarantine, so self-portraiture is my favorite thing. I'm a dark artist, so I create a lot of dark, sort of surreal, sort of whimsical works, I would say, kind of a combination of those things. And it's very much sort of atmospheric, like creating the world that I wish that I could live in, just something that's darker and more conceptual and with ideas that are more prominent.
Yeah. And if people want to find out a bit more about Brooke and get a bit deeper into that conversation, Brooke and I actually recorded a podcast together uh, when we were last together in Vegas at WPPI, and that will be released hopefully very soon, and we'll make sure to share it, and I'm sure Brooke will share that with you as well.
Yeah.
We're getting lots of shout outs coming in from all over the parts of the world, from New York City, Dubai, South Africa, New Hampshire. Someone we know in New Hampshire, Sarah J Photography. She said,
Oh, hi,
"Hi
Sarah.
Sarah. When I asked you what you'd been doing during quarantine, Sarah posted a lovely comment. She says she's spending her time being awesome.
She is. I can vouch for that. We just talked on
No,
Saturday.
no, she was meaning you. You're spending your
Oh,
time being
me?
awesome. Yes.
Well, she is too.
Yeah. She says you're her soul sister. Yeah. Miss you,
Ah,
Sarah. Hopefully we catch up soon. So as always with these shows, I'm delighted that our ambassadors and guests join us to have a little bit of a chat with me, but we also want to give a little bit to you, the audience, and I've asked Brooke to prepare a little presentation for us. There's not, she can't teach our entire world within half an hour, 45 minutes, but she'll give us a little taster. And you've created what you described to me as a presentation about creating simply yet impactfully, correct?
yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, and then I think you also said that once you're done with that, maybe jump into Photoshop a little bit as well if we have
Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be awesome. So while Brooke is giving us her presentation, please in the comments ask any question you like, and then when we get to the end of the presentation, I will feed those questions to Brooke, and she'll spend some time doing a little bit of Q&A at the end. But for now, I think everybody's probably desperate for you to get to your presentation, or for me to shut up and stop talking. So I'm going to hand it over to you for a little bit.
Okay, great.
Do you want to share your screen with us, and I'll check that that side of things
Yes.
is working?
I will do that. Let me see.
People
Slideshow
people
from
giving us shout
beginning.
outs from Denmark, from Pennsylvania, and Scarborough. Now, Scarborough is somewhere I would recognise as an English city, but it's actually Scarborough, South Africa. That's pretty cool. So literally people from all over the world tuned in at the moment, which is awesome. Right, let's
Great.
switch over to your screen.
Yeah.
Yep, wonderful. We can see your screen.
Okay.
So I will hand it over to you. Thanks,
I did
Brooke.
it. Yay. Thank you so much, Alistair. And I hope you know that people like to hear from you too. So, and also, if you guys do have questions, nothing is off limits unless Alistair decides that it's off limits. But really, like, feel free to ask anything. I'm super, super happy to answer anything, whether it's art, Photoshop, business, personal, conceptual, whatever you might want. So I wanted to give you this quick overview of what I do. And these are all images that I shot in the first year of creating. These were all shot pretty much in 2009. And that was when I started my journey. That was when I started posting on Flickr. And my first picture that I ever made is posted on Flickr from day one. That's what I did. I just shared on Flickr and nowhere else. And that was like my little home. So these were the types of images that I was posting. And I think, like many of us, when you start out on your creative journey, you don't really have a very clear sense of where you're going or what it means, or if it's going to be your career or just a hobby. And at this point, it was totally just a hobby. I didn't know really what I was doing. I just had all these ideas, and I had just come out of film school where I felt so creatively stifled in some ways, because even though my school was great and I had a wonderful time making films, I just didn't like working with people, and I didn't want other people to sort of like mess up my vision, I guess. I mean, I can mess up my vision just fine by myself, so I didn't need other people to do it for me. And I felt like every time I collaborated, it was this frustrating experience of feeling like I didn't understand how to properly communicate what I wanted and then also feel comfortable in that environment. So I started these self-portraits. And the very first series that I ever created was called Small Deaths. And some of these images are from that series. The first three on the top row are from that series, where I wanted to explore what death is and what that looks like. And I didn't have a lot of thought beyond that. Like, I wasn't going into this with this really deep amount of research or personal experience. I just wanted to make images about death. And I think, like so many of us, we have these inclinations, these desires, and we don't really know why. We can't really pinpoint why we feel called to do something, but we just know that we like it and we want to do it. And that's what I did here. So I was creating with not a lot of intention beyond I like this. And I started to realize by posting on Flickr that if I liked it, somebody else was bound to like it. But equally, somebody else was bound to hate it. And that's how I started my journey. So I started realizing after some time, probably about 3 months, that the work that I was creating was resonating with people in some way. So people would email me and say, like, I've never felt so understood by looking at a piece of art, or I've never hated looking at art more than I hate looking at your art. And it was really demoralizing at the time because I just wanted everybody to like me. And it was about 3 months in that I realized that the act of making people hate what you do is the act of creating something important. And I didn't really have that intent. I just wanted to make stuff. So I got really serious about my work and what I was making and what that would look like. And I started to think, if I'm going to create images, there needs to be a greater purpose behind them. And I want to, if I'm going to influence the way people feel about art or their life or my life or whatever it may be, I want there to be great intent behind that. And that's when I started to cultivate a style. Now, that happened immediately for me. I didn't have to really work toward a style because I already had some vision in my head, but I really needed to pinpoint what that was exactly and how I was going to expand on that. So I started realizing, and you can see by looking at these images, that I naturally gravitated towards super simple works. And I'll explain what that meant for me in just a second. So impact, largely, because we're talking about creating impactful art, but simply and in a sustainable way where you don't feel burnt out by doing it. So for me, impact comes from thematic connection. It comes from sort of understanding the central idea behind your work and then understanding how to connect that to a wider audience. For me, impact came from and comes from shock value. And when I started on Flickr, the very, very first offensive comment that I got was, your work, you're just making it for shock value. You're not doing it for any other reason than to just shock people and get attention. And I was so offended by that. I remember just being like, you don't know me. You don't know why I'm doing this. And it's only really in the most recent years that I've been creating that I realized that wasn't untrue. And there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, art is shocking. Art is meant to stir the emotions. And that's okay for that to be a part of where your impact comes from. For me, it was also beauty, finding beauty in the darkness that I was creating and trying to relate that. And then also, perhaps the biggest one is just being weird. Like, I was making weird stuff as evidenced by these images, which are not normal in any way. And I was really sort of quick to embrace that and just say, you know what? I am weird and off, and that's okay. And it's great if you are too. So that's where my impact comes from. But I didn't choose those things because I thought this will connect best with an audience. I chose them because that's just where I find the greatest impact in art and in life. So I started to utilize those things. The way that I utilize those things is by creating really simply with my subject. So I'm using a single subject in almost all of my images, just one centered single subject. And that really helped in creating simple images because I'm a huge fan of complicated imagery where there's a lot going on in the frame and it's like, really just like a lot to take in. But that's not how I enjoy creating. And that's generally not what I gravitate toward when I look at art. So I'm utilizing a single subject to make it really simple, just 1 to 2 colors per image, so that there's an overall color scheme happening and it's really cohesive. I want to make sure that my subject stands out, and I do that by creating separation from the background. And then I also have no distracting backgrounds. So I want to show you some of that in play. This is the first one. That's why I said mostly, single subject mostly, because this first one obviously does not have a single subject. In fact, there are 88 of me cloned into this image, but there is a really clean background, nothing distracting happening. It's a really sort of symmetrical image. And we do have one single subject standing out from the background. In this image, we have sort of a yellow monotone color with one piece of red in there. So that's my 1 to 2 colors. Now for an image like this is obviously driven by thematic content, because you can't make an image like this without an idea. If you do, then, well, that would be really weird. I don't even think it's possible. There has to be an idea behind an image like this. And the idea here is that I'm shedding my skin, that I am removing the top layer of my skin to show what's underneath. And this is something that perhaps no matter where you are in the world, whether we speak the same language or we've had the same experiences, you can probably understand what this means and how it relates to you and your art. And that's a really big lesson that I take very seriously and that I like to pass on to people, is that if you can create art that connects to somebody, no matter what language they speak or what their experiences are, then you've created art that is universal and yet impactful. So one of the ways that I do that is to create simply. Dark background, subject in the foreground, nothing else going on. So it's really easy for the viewer to just dial into the thing that I need you to look at to understand the theme being shedding your skin. So I don't know if you can like type a comment, but if you resonate with this in some way, like if you get it, if the theme stands out to you, if you would look at this image and be like, yeah, I understand what she's trying to do here, leave me a comment and just say like, I get it, I get you, I understand. That's always helpful. So these are 3 ways that I try to work when I'm creating images that relate to a larger audience. One is to be technically believable. And I don't always know how to do that. I remember I had to edit this image like 3 different times before I finally understood how to create the concept. And here's the kicker. When I made this image, I edited this, like zipper onto my back, and it looked okay. There wasn't anything unbelievable about it. But in this image, you see how the outer skin is sort of desaturated, and then what's underneath, it has more saturation to it. That was the key for me when I was creating this image, was to create that color difference so that it was clear that one set of skin was the one that was coming off and the other one was like the fresh skin underneath. I bet that nobody yet in these live videos have talked about creating a fresh and dead skin look, but there you go. I think it's very relevant to everybody.
I think you're the first.
Awesome. That's all I want to hear. So then the next part, after you've sort of mastered those technicals, is to be conceptually relevant. I get messages from people daily saying, I feel like you made this image just for me. And that's what I study, is how to be conceptually relevant to my audience. So the way that I do that is thinking about what is relevant to me, what concepts continuously pop up in my life that other people can understand and feel like they just get. And so for me, those go back to themes. Concepts essentially are just themes. And my themes are growth, development, decay, rebirth, all these things that we regularly experience on a conceptual level. And that's what this image does as well. And then if your image is conceptually relevant, it's likely to be universally understood if the elements that you're using all relate to each other. So for example, your location, your prop, your wardrobe, the colors you're using, the time period, they all have to work together to tell a central story and deliver that central concept. And if they're at war with one another, let's say that your time period is really modern, but you're trying to use a location that's really old and those things don't really match, then your concept is going to get muddied underneath that. So universally understood art. And these are some of my images that I feel have in some way just sort of hit that mark where people can look at an image and give their own interpretation for it. And no matter what interpretation that is, it's what I meant. It's what I intended, because I am not generally creating works that have one specific meaning. I'm trying to create ambiguous works that can relate to a larger amount of people. So for this image, you might think that she's being pulled down by the hands, or you might think that she's being pushed up by the hands. And I would love to hear that. So if you can leave a comment and just say if she's being pushed up or pulled down, I would love to get your interpretation of that, because it's meant to be ambiguous, and I want to know what the viewer thinks about it. I genuinely believe that art is enhanced when the viewer can sort of overlay their interpretation on top of it. So I actually titled this image Push and Pull with that intent, so that you wouldn't know which one I intended. You know, people always say, like, I want to know what the artist intended, or like, can you figure out what the artist intended? But my favorite art is the ones where the artist doesn't have one single interpretation in mind. So choose one per category. What I mean by this is, if you can create simple art, then essentially what you're doing is you're just choosing one location, one wardrobe, one prop, one time period, one style of lighting per image. And if you can essentially just choose one thing for each of those categories and then relate them to the story, then you're going to have a more successful time at creating simple yet impactful art, which is the topic of what we're talking about today. I think that art gets really confusing when you have lots and lots of props, or like a location that's really difficult to look at. Now, there are people who do that amazingly well, so I'm not saying that it's not possible. But for me, the simpler the visuals of the art, the more impactful it is to the viewer, in my experience. And that's really all I can relate to you. So here's an example of another image of mine. I'm going to break this down really quick. So this is how this image started. I am a huge fan of creating simply. So I'm creating by myself. This was just in my backyard at my last house. I literally just walked outside. It was very cold. I was pretty miserable, but I did it. I walked outside, laid in this puddle, and I knew what I wanted the concept to be. The concept and the title of this image is ripples. And I wanted to create this ripple effect, like the things that we touch have ripples. And so I started with this image where I had my hand in the water. I was just sort of bobbing it up and down to make little ripples for the shots. And then I expanded my frame outward. So I'm thinking very, very much about the background of this image here. I've expanded my frame, but I didn't tilt my camera up so much that you could see all of the distracting trees and shrubbery in the background. I had enough of that to be able to expand my frame even more, but I noticed that if I didn't just have the solid rock in the frame and the puddle, it was just too much visual content to look at, and it was confusing. So I'm fixing that up. In separate shots, took a little rock and I threw it in the water to create those little ripples and drips. And then I desaturated. So here we have two competing colors. Now, like I said, I like to use 1 to 2 colors in a single image. And this was already 2 colors, which could be okay. But for me, having a red and a green, or a red and a blue, that's a little bit of a challenging color combination because they're both really powerful colors. So I desaturated the whole entire image so that I could start fresh. I could pick my own color palette. So I made my dress red, and I did that because I wanted to give the feeling of blood in this picture. Like maybe just that deep red color gives you this feeling like of uneasiness, like there's a lot of red going on. What does it mean? Is she bleeding into the water? And that's when I started to take a look at how I could create more reds and reflections in the water. So here you can see, like, there's always been a reflection of clouds in the puddle, but I'm enhancing it so that it looks really stormy and adding more red color into the image overall. So by desaturating it and then adding color back in, I'm creating this really uniform color palette that's really easy to understand as relating to the theme of the image. So how do you give the viewer something simple yet meaningful to attach to? I am a big believer in theme or concept or idea or the message or whatever you want to call it. Like if theme doesn't work for you, that's totally okay. So I create with theme. I try to give the viewer something to attach to by telling them what the concept is by pointing to these very specific visuals. But theme is expressed through symbolism. It always is. And you don't have to be a master of symbolism to understand this concept. So here we have an image that I created. It's kind of a good one to take a look at, I think, because again, it's simple. I got rid of the background. So in the background of this image, depending on where I pointed my camera when I shot the water, there was either a beach, a boat, or a landscape in the background. So I let the landscape be in the background. I gave it a sort of a stormy sky, but it's not really like a distracting background, I would say. But I'm way in the foreground of this image wearing white, which is going to stand out more than anything else, lighting the lantern. So bringing the literal light forward into the frame so that you can totally understand that. But I bring up this image because this is an image where theme is central, and this image has connected very deeply with a lot of people. So when we have essentially we have a dark space. We have this girl who's like half underwater standing there, really, really dark image, like visually dark. But then I'm lighting a lantern underwater, which is a symbol or a representation of a light in a dark place. So people relate to this image because what we're doing is saying, look, I'm bringing my own light into the darkness, and people can relate to that no matter who you are, where you come from, it doesn't matter. Another image that tends to relate pretty well to people because of the theme. Now, in this case, I'm using a prop to communicate the theme. The prop being a bird cage being a symbol or a representation of entrapment. And then when you put a human inside a cage, of course, you give the message that there is a person who feels trapped for whatever reason, physically or emotionally, it doesn't really matter. I created that image really simply by shooting in my office, which I'm sitting in right now, taking a picture of a desert landscape out in a field. And then I photographed this bird cage at a vintage store, like a little thrift store, because I'm very cheap and I didn't want to pay for it. So I asked them if I could photograph it there. You can actually see the price tag like up in the bird cage there, which is kind of funny. So I've edited that together. And again, it's just super, super simple. So getting rid of the distracting background. In this case, I would actually argue that I'm trying something new with my color scheme. So not the best example for colors, even though it's still pretty muted, but I wanted to try something new. But single subject, center of the frame, simple prop, and then no distracting background. Here's one that I shot in my office again, just using my ring light. So I photographed myself. I photographed this mask that I just love, and just trying something new with light. So how can we use light and technique to push a theme forward? In this case, we're looking at essentially like these little, stars through the eyes of the moon mask, and then relating that to a woman. And that might have a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people, depending on your associations with those things. I wanted to just talk briefly about how we can create art that is simple yet impactful, even if there's a lot going on and even if it's for somebody else. So this is an image that I shot last year for In This Moment, which is a band. Their album just came out 2 months ago, maybe. And I wanted to share how this was created, because the conceptualization process of art is, of course, radically difficult, but also really important. So here is an example of the very first, please pardon my horrible sketching, but my very first concept sketch that I drew for this album cover, based on the band's notes. So like they wanted to have somebody emerging from the ground, something really dark, really like mysterious and cloudy, and something to do with tree roots. So that was my very first iteration. And then I drew this concept where I thought we could have like this idea of the mother, because the album is called Mother, like really, really tall with all these little people sort of bowing to her all around. This is the concept art that we collaborated on, where the lead singer, Maria, gave this to me, and she said, I think this is kind of like the direction we want to go. And then that's what it turned into. These were supplemental shots that I did for the band, because this image ended up being so complicated in terms of there are 7 figures in this. There are tree roots, there's underground, there's above ground, there's clouds. There's a lot going on in that image visually. So for the rest of the album art, we created super simple stuff where there's just one single subject in a lot of them, really, really clear, really easy to look at. So it can be really rewarding to create artwork for other people. But if you can relate the theme that you're going for to all of these very distinct visuals, you're more likely to create something that has more cohesion, and it just makes a lot more sense to a wider audience, which of course, this being their album cover, had to make sense to a large audience. And so that was really the task there. For the final images that I want to share with you before we open up Photoshop, because I have 5 images open in Photoshop that I want to take you through, I just wanted to share a little bit of this series, because this series is my most recent series that I published a year ago. It's called Begin Again. And what I'm doing here is, and you'll see, I'm creating with multiple subjects, but really, really simple locations. So here we have some images where it might be a little bit more confusing to look at than some of my other pictures, because yes, there's one central subject, but then we have 6 reflections. Yep, I need to count faster. So we got 6 reflections in the background and just one subject who's really there, shards of glass. And so it was really important that the colors be super neutral or uniform and the background be really just simple and clean, because I knew I was going to have more subjects in the frames here. There's a lot going on with the props and the people. So creating that neutral background was key to creating the most impactful art that I could for this series. This is not how the backdrops looked in the real images. The backdrops had bright skies and you could see all the mountains and the trees, and I got rid of them by using sort of a fog overlay on all of these images. You can see, especially an image like this with so many subjects, if the subject doesn't stand out, or let's say in this particular image, let's say that there was like a tree in the background distracting you from the subject, that's not going to be as impactful as if you have the subject standing out from the background. Okay. So let me take you into Photoshop here, if I can figure this out. Oh, hey, Alistair.
Hi. See, just before we do that, do you want to hear some of the comments that came in about some of the images while you were doing that?
Love that.
There are some questions, but I will come back to your questions at the end. But Sarah J says that the shedding of skin photo always said to me, there's more inside, more to see, hidden by that outer layer that we create to shield ourselves from the outside harms of the world. So that was her interpretation of that.
Love it.
Yeah. Lily says, it gives me major chrysalis vibes. She loves this piece, that your shedding skin one.
Thank you.
And yeah, when you asked if people got it, Margarita said, yeah, totally get it. Lots of people saying they understood what you were meaning by that. And then Sarah also gave us a comment about the hands images, the push-pull one. Hands one to me is neither pulling or pushing, but touching, probably because I don't like being touched.
Yes.
So I love how people interpret in different ways, and I love how you let people interpret it without, being out there about what you state the image is about. You let people interpret it, so that's great.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of it. Like I think that a lot of artists have worse experiences as artists because we become so attached to the outcome and how people interpret that outcome. But I'm more attached to the process and then just, letting it go, like truly releasing my art into the world. And I think that's so fun.
It's a bit like lyrics to a song. We always try and interpret lyrics, and you get frustrated when you can't, you Google it,
Yes.
you can't find out what the band were trying to tell you. And sometimes that's kind of cool, and you can just interpret entire songs for yourself and get your own feelings and emotions and needs and reactions from those images. So let's see if your Photoshop screen is working. Let's go back.
Is it up?
It is indeed, yeah.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to take you through a few images that I created this year. I think all of them this year, and just break them down in the Photoshop process really quickly. Now this one, probably a lot of you guys have already seen this breakdown of this image. Whoa, that's wonky. And this was an image that I created for a video that I made for my series White Wall Wednesday, which is on YouTube. And basically I wanted to show how simple creating can be. And so here's the first little bit popping in. Can you even see that? Like, that's my face.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I taped a bed sheet to my wall. I stood behind the bed sheet and then I cut a little hole in it to stick my hand through. There it is. And so that's how I started creating this image. I just took pictures of me up against my wall behind a bed sheet. And then I started creating. So to make the subject pop out, which is what you're seeing here, I use the dodge and burn tools just to create highlights and shadows where there would naturally be, to enhance them so that you could really get that 3D effect like somebody was behind the wall. I left a little bit of the stretch of the sheet in so that it looked like I was pushing through somewhere. And then all I'm really doing is creating more, I don't know, I guess contrast, brightness, changing how you see the subject in this image so that it really looks like somebody's coming through the wall. And like, what a great example of an incredibly simple image. So I didn't feel the need to have like a couch in this picture or a lamp or, anything decorating the frame. But what I did think was really important in this image was that you could see the floor, because without the floor, like if I just crop it like this, it still looks cool, but you can't really tell that it's a room necessarily. Like, you take away the context. So I try to find a balance in my locations for simplicity where there's enough context so that you understand the vibe of the space, but not so much that it's distracting in any way. So there's that image. I wanted to share this image as well because it's in direct contrast. We're outside, vibrant colors, a lot going on here. And so this image started like that. It was super, super beautiful. I went out really early in the morning, so early, in fact, that I couldn't even see where I was walking. I had to use my phone to light the way, which was kind of terrifying because I ended up falling a little bit into the frozen water, but it was okay. It was just my foot. It was only 20 degrees out. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but very cold.
Cold.
And yeah, negative something.
Yeah.
And so I came out here to do this photo. So I'm just dulling down the highlights on my dress because I felt like I was a little bit too bright, expanding my frame. So that's what the area actually looked like before I started changing it, adding a flame on and darkening that flame, just expanding my frame outward. And again, I'm just creating really simply. So you can see these power lines off in the corner. And that's obviously not ideal for me because I'm trying to make sure that my time period matches in every way. So if I'm going to wear this old sort of timeless dress, then I also need my location to be timeless as well. So having buildings and, power lines in the background isn't going to cut it. So you'll see that go away there by adding that sky in. And now at this point, it doesn't look good at all. It's just kind of sitting as an overlay there without any real blending. But I'm starting to blend it by making the background, that horizon line, pretty dark, and then adding a fog layer over it so that the sky just naturally blends into the background. Here's a fog layer that I've put in. And then I'm creating light. So what I noticed, I tried to connect the flame to the smoke that goes to this little bit of light right there in the sky. And that's why it was so important to me to start to highlight that area. So the light is really coming from that direction now. And that's not a choice that I made ahead of time. I didn't say, okay, I have to get a sky that has a little bit of light in it and then make that light stream down. But I saw the opportunity. And I think that's really an important thing to note when you're editing, is that you may, there's my hand popping in there. You may have opportunities present themselves for even greater theme highlighting. And so I'm just highlighting the theme even more by making those connections when I edit. I'm almost done with that one. There we go. And so that's where I ended that image. Let me move on to this one. This is kind of a weird one. Again, shot in my office. Some pictures just really make me laugh when I undo them. So we've got this, it's just a brown bed sheet in the background of the image, window light coming from the side, and then just adjusting the lighting and the hue saturation, and then darkening down the backdrop. And you can see I colored over my face because it didn't end up mattering. And then what I did was I took a magnifying glass and I photographed that magnifying glass over different parts of my body. So I didn't need a lot to make this image. All I really needed, these are really funny. All I really needed was just that magnifying glass and a window, and that's it. And then I used creative ways of cutting them out and adding them in and sort of rearranging the order of my face to create this image. So this one was really simple in that regard. It was just a lot of cutting out of circles and overlaying them on one another, adding a texture. And then for the final few steps here, just bringing a little bit more contrast onto the subject. This one is really funny because it doesn't seem like a lot is happening, but there's such a difference between that and that. Okay, so final two that I want to share with you as we go down here. So this was shot really close to my house, just at this little creek that's really close by. I had to wade across the water, lay down with my remote. I think this might be the moment that I broke my remote. I'm still waiting for a replacement. And what I noticed here was that these sticks were just arranged naturally where they were kind of cascading down to the water. And it wasn't much. Like you can see that it's not like, you know, a lot of people might not notice that, and that's okay. But it really stood out to me, and that's why I laid myself down in that particular spot. So here I mirrored the sticks so that we have both sides sort of pointing to the subject in the water. And then I started this really fun process of dodging, using the dodge tool to highlight the sticks in the areas that I wanted to highlight. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying, I see a concept in this space that other people will probably not notice. So how can I get them to see what I see? And that was to highlight those sticks. And then the rest of the process was just coloring and darkening this image quite a lot. And so I'm just going through adding texture, but mostly I'm just darkening and desaturating and adding color in to this picture. There are kind of a shocking amount of steps here for how simple this image is. But again, all I'm doing is just highlighting what I want to highlight and then getting rid of what I don't want in this image. And that's where we ended there. So the final one that I want to share is an image that I just shared today for the first time. And this was just shot in my bathroom, my very, very tiny bathroom, I might add. And I really wanted to do an image where my bathtub was filled with yarn, but I didn't have enough yarn, and there's no way I'm going to spend that much money on yarn. I think that would be just crazy. So instead, I filled my bathtub with pillows and blankets and all sorts of stuff. And then I laid that same brown bed sheet right over top of everything. And then I unraveled the yarn on top of that so that it looked like my bathtub was filled with yarn. And that's what's happening here. I didn't have a very good angle on my tub, just user error. So I fixed that. And then this step is kind of funny. I don't know if you guys, this is like my signature thing, y'all. Like in the beginning, when I started creating images, I would use the heel brush tool on everything, like to get rid of backgrounds. So I found this background too distracting. I didn't like all the lines and the symmetry and how modern it looked. So I just used the heel brush tool to get rid of all of that. No shame. I love it. So there's more yarn that I'm adding in, and that's what you'll see me do here is just continuously repiling the yarn from different shots. So I took different shots of the yarn in different positions, all in the tub, added that in, and that's what you see happening here. Is just a lot of yarn being added and mirrored, which is what's happening there. I have a shower curtain. It was super dark on that side, so I just mirrored the image to create this nice symmetry of the bathtub. There goes the yarn, dulling down the highlights a little bit more. And then we'll just whip on the rest of these layers because it's, again, the same process, just creating with a lot of texture, changing how we see the light so that my subject is highlighted and you're looking at exactly what I want you to look at and not anything else. Very important to me. So that there's the subject, a lot of contrast, done. Okay. So, that was a lot of stuff in Photoshop, wasn't it? Let me stop sharing my screen real quick.
That was great. You know when now that you've shown all that, the first time your son unrolls lots of yarn somewhere or does something crazy, you can't do anything about it because you've done it all first, right?
I know I've already had experiences like that. I'm like, no, why are you pouring water on the floor? I'm like, oh yeah, he just watched me do that for a photo. Yeah.
Learn from the best. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing all that.
Real
Real insight into how you visualize the initial image and then build it up to get to that final image, which is absolutely amazing. A lot of it, the one with the magnifying glass, you mentioned a couple of times as you were showing us that this is quite simple. but it's the way that you tie it all together. There's the toning work that you do is, in my eyes, absolutely phenomenal, and it's kind of key to it
Thank
all,
you.
right?
It is, and that's my favorite part. And I think that like a lot of people, now let me say, like there's learning compositing is amazing, and it obviously opens up a million different avenues for you to create different things. But like anybody can learn compositing. That's not like anybody can push the buttons in Photoshop, but it's the colors that you choose and the lighting that you choose and how you bring it together to create the atmosphere in your images that really makes it yours. And so whenever I teach a class or I, go through mentoring or something like that, I'm constantly trying to drill into people that you will learn the compositing. That is something that will definitely come, but it's the signature style that really we need to be working on from day one.
Yeah, I can compose it, but I can't tie it together. I can't do the color work and the toning. That's where it's always let me down, unfortunately. Right, I'm going to have to scroll back here because there's a lot of comments and a lot of questions, and you can go back, Brooke, and read them once the video is live up on YouTube.
Great.
But let me scroll back. There was definitely some questions in there.
Yeah, and if anybody needs me to open Photoshop again, I can just share my screen again,
Yeah,
and
we
if you
can
need
we
to
can
look
do
at
that.
something.
There was a question very early on. Let me see if I can find it. My goodness, scrolling back further than I thought. It was. Bear with me. Yeah, here it is. It was Suzanne asked, "What's Brooke's biggest inspiration?"
Death. I just honestly like I'm inspired by many different facets of death. And so that's why, for example, I do a lot of work inspired by rebirth and identity, because I think that the more we examine our own imminent death, the more we focus in on who we want to be and how we can sort of be reborn into that person over and over again throughout our lives. I'm inspired by dark imagery, dark classic paintings like Goya, for example. I'm obsessed. And I think that death is just really inspiring because it's the singular thing that we can all agree makes us question our mortality. And that, like, what better inspiration is there for art than to constantly reevaluate what that means to you? So that's my number one. I love surrealism, and I love like any classic surrealist artists. I think that just like bending our reality, magical realism, stuff like that is just amazing.
Cool. Thank you for the question. And let's see. Next one was from Amani, and they ask, "Do you ever feel like some themes have become so common, almost cliches? How do you stand out when there's so much of the same out there?"
It's a great question because I think that like if you force me to think about it, I would say yeah, probably, but I just don't think about it ever. I avoid any line of thought that takes me into the question of has somebody else done this or will it be done better? Like those are questions that I don't even let myself think about. And I think that the more you try to avoid those questions, like right when it starts to pop up in your mind, you just shut it down, because that is what stops people from becoming a professional in what they do, becoming an expert in what they do, becoming a leader in what they do, is that constant questioning of, am I just doing something that's a trend? Am I doing something that's outdated or that's overdone? And I just never ask. I just say, if I want to do it, I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to do it the best I can. And if that competes with other people, great. And if it doesn't, then, well, at least I did it. So,
Yeah. Don't overanalyze it. Don't overthink it. Do it because it's what you want to do. Because,
yeah.
in every genre of photography, not just your genre, but, landscapes, weddings, every genre, it's mostly the themes and the concepts have mostly all been done.
Right.
It's how we put our signature on those that really sets us apart. So yeah, definitely don't overthink it, and just go for it and make it the best that you can make it. Question here
Yeah.
from Lily. It was great. She put a question mark at the beginning, which really helped me find it. What was the biggest challenge of working from someone else's concept art? How do you deliver for the client while still being true to your vision?
I have such a hard time working with people. So this is a great question. Um, so basically, before I ever take a job for somebody else, we discuss the concept extensively. So I need to make sure that the concept is in alignment and that they understand what my skills are, which is a really big deal to me. I've in the past neglected to do that, to like explain what my skill set is. And then down the line, the client is like, well, just do this for my image. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that, or I can't do that, or I won't do that, or I don't want to. And so now I'm super, super clear before we sign a contract or anything. Like, this is my skill set. This is what I can do. I make them point out the images of mine that they like, that they want to do something inspired by, because almost always they've seen something of mine that they already like, that they want to do a different spin on. So I do that. And then I just say to them, like, let's come up with some concepts, some sketches, talk it through. And then if we're in agreement, then we'll move forward. And so that's what I do. And it doesn't always work out. Like, I've had plenty of shoots with people where I get on set and I'm like, well, this is not what I expected it to be. And I really wish that I hadn't done this. And a great example is, I photographed an opera singer who was awesome and I loved her and she had such good energy. And we made like some really gorgeous pictures together. Her album art was beautiful. But then like halfway through the day, they were like, okay, now we need you to do like at least 10 to 15 headshots for us. And I was like, what? I don't know how to do a headshot. And I did it, and they were like, oh, this isn't, what is this? We don't like this. And I was like, yeah, me neither. This didn't work out for either one of us. So now I'm super clear about what my skill set is, what I'm willing to do, how that's going to look. And I just try to get really specific.
That's awesome. That question obviously came in when we were talking about the album cover for the album Mother, and Amani gave us a concept scene. She shouted this in capitals. I love that album cover so much. So,
thanks, Amani.
Margarita is desperate to see the Samsara project. When will you be releasing Samsara? She's so looking forward to it.
Yeah. I actually don't even know right now. I'm trying to figure it out. So this is my ask of you, because I've been wrestling with this for a year. I don't know if I should release them all at once and make like an interactive website around it, or if I should do it slowly on social media and then end with the interactive website. So please, please, please let me know what your preference is. I just don't know. I'm usually super decisive and I just can't figure it out. I was supposed to have the exhibition debut today, which is not doing. It's going to debut in June instead, I think. But I'm still not convinced I should share them yet. So we'll see. Because it'll be a work in progress for the next year.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it as one body of work, but there's also benefits in releasing it as you're doing it. Difficult one.
Yeah.
Let's give Jay a hard time because he joined in very late and said, hi, sorry I'm late. But, you know, Jay, none of us noticed until you said that. So it's your own fault, man. We'll give you a hard time for that. You can catch up on the rewatch. Question here. Do you use Discord?
What's Discord?
It's a kind of chat platform. I don't know who Redone is asking.
Is that a video game thing?
I think so. My son uses it. I'm too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No.
Marguerite says, Brooke, you should knit crochet something with all that yarn for your exhibition. For an exhibition.
I wish I knew how. Maybe I should. I might try, actually. I've done something before where I kind of like glued yarn on top of an image with yarn in it, and so that could be fun. I'll play with that.
Sarah J says, I use heel brush, but for big things I use frequency separation for my backgrounds, and it is awesome.
Cool.
A lot of people use that. And then a question here from Lottie. She says, Brooke, what's your workflow when a shoot is not what you expect that you had in mind?
This happens all the time, let me just say. So, in fact, like, I want to see if I can find this really quick before we hang it up here. Yep. I just did an image. I don't even know when that was. Like earlier this week, and it was not what I wanted it to be, and I was super frustrated about it. And so I want to show you all of the iterations that I have gone through so far, because I will start this answer by saying sometimes I just know that it's not right and I'll just immediately reshoot it. But I'm pretty stubborn and I don't love shooting like as much as I love editing. So I always want to try to make something work. So can I share my screen again? Is that okay?
Yeah, you share it and then I'll bring it in once.
Okay, cool. So, all right, I should be sharing now.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, so these are 3 of the same image that I just can't figure out how to edit. And I shot this earlier this week. And so my typical...
Hang on a sec. I think you've got me on a layer above.
Sorry.
So I can see myself. So you maybe need to hide zoom out the
There you go.
way.
Is
Because
that better?
we're not seeing your picture in picture.
Oh,
Let me see. Yeah, your picture's frozen for some reason.
oh. You can't see me flipping?
No, I can see you just your actual video of you. The
Oh, my
screen.
video's frozen.
Yeah, your video's frozen. You look great, so that's okay. Normally when mine freezes, I'm pulling some kind of strange face, but but we can see your
Well, I'll
screen.
stop sharing in like a second,
Yeah,
so maybe that'll help. Okay, so I'm just showing you that these are the 3 things that I'm trying to make work, and it took all 3 of these edits for me to realize that I just don't like my dress, and that's the only issue that I have with this. And so I'm going to reshoot this with a different wardrobe. So for me, it's like it really depends on specifically if I can like point to the thing that I hate about the image, or if I feel like I just need to grow my skills in Photoshop. So I always try to grow my skills first, and then when something stands out as being like a non-negotiable, then I go back and reshoot it.
yeah. Okay, your picture is definitely frozen on the dial in for a moment. Why don't we hang up? Yeah, stop your video and switch it off, switch it on again. See if that works. No, I don't see you. Oh, there you go. We've got you back. There you go. You're moving and everything. It's awesome.
Yes!
Right. Where were we? Gosh, lots of questions come in there while you were talking about that. Lottie, I hope that answered that. It doesn't always go to planned. Most times it doesn't, right?
Yeah, no, I went through like I feel like the last year I had this amazing year where like 90% of what I shot worked out. And then this year it's been like 50%, which is more normal for me.
It's the whole 2020 thing. Nothing's working out this year. So,
Yes.
Jay asked a question, even though he turned up late, he's got the cheek to ask a question. But hey, what's your favorite technique for developing concepts?
So for me, I'm a really big believer in free writing and starting with themes. So for me, I write down themes that I'm really interested in. I just free write ideas of, themes. So like I go back to these same themes, but I might write rebirth, decay, death, hope, light, like just words that really resonate right now. And then I'll pick the one, just totally instinctually that I want to pursue. And then I'll just start free writing anything that I want about it. It might be visual things. It might be a story that I think of. It might just be ideas that relate to that. And then I'll go back through my writing after about 5 minutes and I'll just decide, okay, so these words stood out as interesting visuals and this is how I can create an idea around it. But I find that by free writing from a theme, emotions tend to come out from that. And then to me, the best art is when you have a clear theme that gives the viewer a clear emotion. And so that's kind of how I start. Wait, I can't hear you. What happened?
Oh, that's me. I muted myself.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. My kids were having some fun and I muted myself. How dare they? How dare they have some fun? Lots of comments about the Samsara project. Slowly on social media, says Amani. Jay says all at once. Margarita says all at once. Veronica, she says all at once. I'd much rather it's divided, a little bit divided. I don't think that's any help at all to you, but
same with my brain.
You knew that. You knew that was going to be the response anyway. So
I don't know. I thought really like we might unite on some front here, but clearly not. Thanks, guys.
Oh gosh, my man written back in again. She says, I know Brooke doesn't listen to heavy metal. I do.
True.
Brooke doesn't. So did she actually listen to In This Moment album, Mother?
Yes, I did. And I think I love the band. So like, it's not like I wouldn't choose that style, but I feel like the moment you connect with somebody on any sort of personal level, like whatever they make becomes that much more interesting to you. So I have massive respect for that band and what they do. And I haven't been to their live shows yet, but I hear that they're like a spectacle. So I want to go to one day. I've never really been to a concert, but maybe that'll be my first.
I'll take you to a heavy metal concert. That's my thing.
Awesome.
Man, there's still comments coming in about Samsara slowly on social media because I can't wait, says Suzanne, sorry. So they're divided. You're not going to get an answer. I had something to say about the whole simple approach. It doesn't get any simpler than White Wall Wednesday. right?
No.
Just you and a white
Yeah,
wall.
that's the point.
When did that all start? When did you first do White Wall Wednesday?
I started it like a couple of years ago, and the thing is that like I started going to all these conventions and like photo meetups, and I would sit in on classes, and I would specifically go to compositing classes because I was like, oh, let's see how this person does this. And I was always just so confused, and I felt like these people were teaching like really cool techniques, but that I just couldn't relate to at all. I was like, I don't want to work with models, and I don't want to use lights, and I don't want to do this. And then I thought back to how I started photography, which was just in my apartment. I was so socially anxious that I wouldn't even leave my apartment to go shooting. So that's how I started. And I loved that imagery so much. Like I was in love with what I was doing. So I thought, you know what? There are probably so many people out there who don't have a lot of resources or money or don't want to use models and don't have good locations. So let's just show how we can use a blank white wall or whatever you have to create really simply. So the video that I shared today, with it being Wednesday, is about how to shoot in your bathtub or your bathroom. And it's just like spaces that we all have available to us. Sometimes it's utilizing that space and sometimes it's compositing, but it's just really simple techniques to make it work.
Awesome. I'm going to do a bit of a pitch for you because Brooke has some amazing courses where you can go and learn about this stuff at your own speed and your own pace. You have a relatively new course that's just come out, right?
I do. Yeah, it came out end of last year.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing is if you are a SmugMug customer or a Flickr customer, you can go to a section on SmugMug or Flickr where we have SmugMug perks and Flickr perks. And if you go there, there's actually a really nice discount to that course as a thank you from us to help you, learn and study a little bit more, especially at the moment when we can't quite travel and do quite the type of work that we would typically want to do. So I would encourage you all go check out SmugMug perks and Flickr perks, and yeah, there's a lot of great education on there from lots of our other ambassadors and friends. But Brooke's course is absolutely fantastic, and obviously it helps that community as well during this time. So a little bit of a plug for you there, Brooke. I hope you don't
Thank you.
mind.
I appreciate it.
I know you probably wouldn't do it yourself, so there you go.
Nope.
You actually have quite a lot of courses, right? Not just this new one. There's various courses
Yeah,
out
I
there.
have a lot of courses, hundreds of hours of content. Yeah, bonus downloads, stuff like that. But my newest course is in collaboration with Sebastian Michaels, who is, in my opinion, the best educator that I've ever witnessed in my life. And I really mean that. So that's a lot of hours of education from both of us, a lot of bonus videos for download and stuff like that. And we're adding new content as well. So if you buy into that course, we will continue adding content.
And what kind of things can people expect in that course? What do you cover in there?
So we do one of my favorite things actually is that I do some editing in the course and we talk through a lot of that, but he goes through my edits and explains things in ways that I couldn't believe that I was learning from somebody else about my own process. It was really wild. So there's that. There's a lot of photo shoots. We do 6 different photo shoots, some self-portraits, some with models. We use some external lights, which I've never done really before. Just a lot about how to create connected art and how to create art that means something to a large audience.
Cool. I'll do a little plug just now for ourselves. Obviously, really appreciate you joining today and listening from the presentation from Brooke. But I would love to encourage you to go check out what we do here at SmugMug, both on our SmugMug product and on our Flickr product, and find a product that can really help you showcase your work, and also find a community that can help you be inspired and motivate and educated, or indeed educate. So I'd really encourage you to go check out those. Can I ask you also please to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, hit that little bell notification. That way you will find out about all the wonderful episodes that we have coming up in the near future. On Friday this week, our next episode will be with the amazing Aaron Nace from Flairn, and he will be giving us some essential Photoshop tips and tricks and skills, things that you can learn and then use in themes and conceptual images. But Aaron is absolutely amazing. He's been a Photoshop educator for decades now, and he will be joining us on Friday. And then next week we have some wonderful classes coming up from some of our other ambassadors like Chris Burkhardt, and I'm trying to think. We actually have a conversation with Peter Daring next week, who is the founder of Peak Design, a wonderful brand that we work with. So I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification, come back here and join us on some other episodes. I think we've got to the end of most of the questions. I think we've covered most of it. A lot of thank yous and shout outs for you doing this today. But from me, Brooke, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you
Oh,
here.
thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who watched. It really means a lot to me, and I know to both of us.
Yeah, I know you hate talking to people, and you tell me that repeatedly. So I always feel so honoured when
No,
when you
I
agree
like
to do
you.
these. So again, keep an eye out for the podcast, which will be launched very soon as well. Brooke and I have a kind of hour-long conversation going into the whole history of how Brooke got to this stage in her career. So keep an eye out for that. Both of us will share that with you as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Brooke. We'll see you soon. Look after yourself and, keep creating. And that goes for everybody. We'll see you here on the next episode of SmugMug Live. Thank you so much and goodbye.